Before we get on to your Edinburgh show and your successes in previous Edinburghs, I'm sort of quite interested in your origin story, which seems quite complicated. And you were born in the Lake District, but moved around Europe, basically. Your parents are supposedly teachers, but it sounds more like they might have been spies to me.
In arms dealers, yeah, it does.
Because you grew up in Holland, Slovakia, and Brussels.
Yeah, look, it's a quite a suspicious combination of cities, I will say. It doesn't bode well, but they are unfortunately just teachers, which is I remember going out with someone once, and his dad was convinced that my parents were like dealing in something, because he just couldn't understand why we would be living in like Amsterdam and Brussels, and it was so suspicious, to be fair to him. But yeah, no, I moved. Yeah, it is. I lived in Holland for like 12 years, and then I moved.
Wow.
Did my GCSEs in Slovakia, like we all do, the most sort of relatable part of my life. And then I ended up going to school in Brussels as well. So when I moved to England, it was like the first time I'd sort of lived in England properly. And I remember like feeling as though there was quite a culture shock, which sounds a bit dramatic.
Yeah.
But it was weird, because I kind of only knew like Skins and CBBC. So I kind of only knew Horrible Histories and Skins, and that was sort of my only cultural reference point. And then I was sort of quite confused by the reality of it. But yeah, it was weird.
Pretty much that. That's pretty much the UK.
It's pretty much it, I think. Yeah, inside just there are two wolves. I guess that's pretty much it. Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting. I like it when, I mean, your mum's Belgian anyway, so yeah, and your dad's English, right?
Yeah, so he's from Manchester and she's from Bruges,
yeah.
which is such a random combination of human.
But I think that's it's quite good as a comedian to be. I think there's quite a few international comedians or comedians who grew up somewhere else who now moved to the UK. It's quite good, I think, to arrive here as an adult, even if you've got preconceptions of the place, and then you're sort of an outsider, and also able to be able to step outside what we all take for granted as being normal and go, this is, I think, do you think when you're trying to find comedy in a situation, I think it's quite good to be this sort of outsider, and maybe having moved around so much as well, that makes you sort of an outsider almost everywhere you go.
I think it does. It's kind of weird though, because I feel like in England, people really want to, especially in comedy, people really want to like be able to put you in a box. They want to know exactly where you're from, and they want to know where you're from in the UK, and they want to know what your background is, and then they are able to kind of like sort of categorize the kind of jokes you should be making, which is quite interesting. And so it was kind of coming to the UK and not really understanding certain things, I think has been quite a nice way to be able to comment on stuff that I don't really fully understand either. And I remember like one of the reasons why I started doing this character, because I did a stand-up gig and someone came up to me after, and they had made all these preconceptions about who I was and where I'd come from. And I was like, well, you don't know anything about me, and you've kind of seen my set and made all of these assumptions that I'm this kind of person. And he said you've got this like really sort of like annoying posh girl thing going on. And I was like, God, that's really annoyed me. And so I was like, well, how annoying, like, what if I make a character that is so annoying, that is like all of those things like get tied up to like dialed to 100, like what happens then? So I kind of make the character as a bit of a sort of like, right, if you think that was annoying, like I can be so much more annoying. Which was quite.
So tell us about this. So this, because you've sort of a bit of an overnight success. Certainly, look, it's quite unusual for me to be interviewing anyone under 30 on this podcast, even if they're relatively new. It takes a long time to sort of get anywhere as a comedian or a character comedian or a stand-up these days. So you sort of went to Edinburgh and just had this. You had one of those sort of dream Edinburghs where this show became just a huge success straight off the bat, which is what everyone sort of hopes and thinks will happen to them in Edinburgh, but it happens about 1 in 1,000 people. So tell us about what the character is for people who don't know. It's Clementine.
So she started off as a sort of like Regency parody show, and I studied history, and I sort of quite liked the idea of making a character from history that was sort of really unempowering and uninspiring, and it was kind of in the sort of same world as when we were watching Six, the musical, and the idea of like Anne Boleyn being a girl boss I thought was quite funny. So I was like, what if we had a character that was sort of so uninspiring? And I kind of played with that, and then it was also, like, as you said, it was a sort of way for me to learn how to do comedy and write as I was doing it, which was quite sort of scary, because I don't think I realised, I think when I went to Edinburgh, the sort of stakes of it, like you really do go out into the amphitheatre, and you're like, I think you don't really realise what a huge battleground it is. And I think in some respects that was kind of to my advantage, because I didn't know what the stakes were. I didn't know what any of it meant. And I was just kind of like doing it on, I was working a million jobs to just try and make it happen. And then it was, I think it mainly worked and did really well because it felt like it was something that was really of the moment. It was really and also really popular with like lots of young women, which was really nice. And then they all told their friends, and they brought their sisters and stuff, and it was really it was really exciting. But I think at that point I didn't really realize how rare that was, and now I'm in that really difficult position of being like, oh, now I have to do a show that is even better than that, and that is proving to be really difficult.
Right. Did the first one kind of wrap up? I mean, it feels like, having read the reviews of it, it was sort of like, so it's about sort of Austen character, but with sort of modern overtones, and about that search, the sort of desperate search for a man.
Yeah, it's sort of, it kind of, yeah, it was weird, because when I started doing it, it was sort of about love and about, I guess it broadly like romanticism and that kind of period of history. And then the more I did it, the kind of more relevant it became, and it sort of ended up unintentionally commenting on a lot of like gender issues, and I kind of was saying things I didn't really intend to. People were kind of reacting in the audience, and I was like, oh, didn't really mean to say that. So it kind of became a little bit more political than I was intending it to be.
Right.
But then, yeah, it was sort of about like love and gender, I guess, broadly. And I suppose also there was something about doing a character which was quite like antagonistic and quite sort of like high status, which sometimes has not gone down well, I will say. But in general, I think that was kind of quite a bit of like an affront, because if you don't like it, like you kind of just have to sort of suck it up or leave, which is also quite an interesting hour for people who are like, what the hell is this?
Well, I mean, that's comedy, and that's especially the Edinburgh Fringe. I think, it is great that people will take a chance, and sometimes someone will see something that isn't to their taste and have to make those decisions. I mean, it's kind of I think it's a certain type of person who won't just give something. Well, who leaves, or won't just go, okay, this is 50 minutes of my life. I've made a mistake. I'll live with that, and and see if I can get anything out of this. But I mean, it definitely seemed to resonate. It's interesting to me. You're saying things within the character that have surprised you and have shocked people. Are you over? Does the character take you over to some extent in that case? Is she
a little bit. It's a bit scary.
You're not
it's a bit scary sometimes. Yeah. Well, someone was like, it's a bit sort of like, you describe it as like a bit of a possession. And when they said that, I was like, oh, I don't know. But there is a little bit. I think there's a kind of weird alchemy to any kind of character stuff, and especially if it's a sort of kind of become a bit of an alter ego. I think, unfortunately, when I'm in like a really crazy mood in my personal life, I'm incredible on stage, which is a really unfortunate kind of combination. But yeah, I think there's been times where I've said stuff and I'm like, God, where did that come from? Like, that was such what a weird kind of like comment, and what kind of recesses of my brain does that pop from? But it's quite nice to be able to have been like now in a position where I can kind of just exist and riff as the character. But I have a couple of rules that I don't like watching myself back, because I don't want to become like too self-aware of what I'm doing. Because if I think for one moment, what am I doing, then I truly won't do it ever again, because it's crazy. And I think sometimes I'm getting ready before I'm doing a show, and I think like, God, what am I doing with my life? Like dressed up in pearls, and I've got like birds in my hair, and I think like I have actually made this happen. Like, this is a hell of my own making in many ways. So yeah, but there's been a lot of things that have been really surprising about it. And also I think that it's quite nice when there's now a bit of a kind of fan base and people are really interested to know like what else is in this world, which is quite fun. And when I've been doing the second show, people are like, yeah, we remember that character, and I'm like, really? God, I thought that was just me. And they're like really waiting for like these new characters to pop out, which is really quite a lot of pressure as well, though, because I'm like, God, I'll send people some pre-reading and see if there's anything that they need to know.